There's been a lot of talk about Miami Hurricanes defensive backfield. Could this be the Achilles heel for the 2024 season?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, also co-host of Locked On ACC. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. On this episode, I want to get a scouting report on top Miami Hurricanes recruiting target DJ Pickett, the type of scouting report that only Larry Blustein can give us, which is a hint on who's about to join us. I do want to talk about Miami's offense and the potential with Cam Ward and Damien Martinez to go along with Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, an ascending tight end room and a solid offensive line. But I do want to talk about that Hurricanes defensive backfield, because I would venture to guess that when you're actually talking about the personnel for a unit that does have some questions about their depth and about their youth, a man who covered most of these players when they were in high school and even younger in some cases, Larry Blustein, our guest, can break that down better than anyone else. Blue, how you been?
I'm doing good. Worn out, but it is a tough month. Obviously, spring football, get a chance to kind of pre-travel a little bit. Went to 13 out-of-area schools last week, and then seeing a lot of programs this week, especially because this is the culmination for some of the programs as they will be playing their spring games or whatever. And I like it because now they're making it a lot more college friendly, where a college coach can park their butt at one stadium and watch 8 different schools instead of having to go all over the South Florida area. So, yeah, it's been busy. And then June 1st kind of cranks it up for the whole month of June, because obviously NCAA member schools can't do anything for the first 3 weeks of July. So they get it done and go to college camps. And as you know, Miami and all the other schools have 7-on-7s and line camps and special camps and, mega camps, which I kind of frowned on at the beginning. But then as you see, more and more college coaches get to go to those games. You get to those camps and then get the opportunity to see a lot more kids. So hopefully last year we saw upwards around 3,000 kids in the month of June. And this time around, I think we'll venture to say we're going to see a lot of the same.
I love it. And Blue's probably the busiest man in the business and the hardest working man in the business. And Blue, I'd love your perspective on the Miami Hurricanes defensive backfield. The Hurricanes have done so many makeovers to the roster heading in to next year. They addressed the quarterback position with an exclamation point with Cam Ward. Damien Martinez, same deal at running back. Sam Brown at wide receiver. Miami looks very strong on the defensive line, especially after adding Simeon Barrow from Michigan State. The linebacker core looks very strong. They added Jalen Alderman to that. But people have questions about the defensive backfield. I wonder if those questions, Blue, in your opinion, are they overblown? Now, Miami obviously did lose Cam Kinchens, and they lost James Williams. Thankfully, they returned Daryl Porter, who's such an important piece at cornerback. And I like what I saw from Meesh Powell from Washington in the spring, who's either going to play nickel or safety at Miami. They are going to be relying on some young players potentially like Damari Brown, Robert Stafford, Jadis Richard, who I thought had a good spring at cornerback, Jaden Harris, Markeith Williams, and I wonder how much Zaquan Patterson I think can play a lot this year. How concerned should Miami fans be about the defensive backfield? Is it too young? Is it not deep enough?
Well, that's a good question, but I think it could be answered. And we kind of tackle this issue a lot on the podcast by what it looks like in the front seven. And the front seven is going to be much better, which is going to afford the defensive backs a little bit more leeway. And I think that it's kind of overblown to think that Miami's not going to be good in the secondary. You give anybody an opportunity to have time to throw the ball or scramble around, and anybody's going to have problems. But I think with with up front with, a Reuben Bain and Clark and Cook and Elijah Alston and whoever else got Josh Horton and Moten and anybody else, is going to give them, a huge addition, especially depth-wise. And then you go to linebacker and you have Wes Saint and Francisco Mauanoa, and then you have a Gary who's had a really good spring, and then you have Cam Pruitt who's come in. So I think when you take a look at guys like, a Damari Brown or Jaden Harris, or even, as you mentioned, and even Isaiah Taylor, who comes in with some experience. Yeah. Arizona, and he had a fairly decent spring, and you look at guys like that, and then you had talked about Powell, but I think that you take a look at somebody like a Daryl Porter, and anytime you go up, and even Miami's schedule, they still got to play the ACC teams, and most of them have really good receivers, big body type of kids. So I think that you have the athletic ability there with, backups, like you said, Jadeus Richard and Markeith Williams, who should, who this could be a breakout year for him. He's been around. Brian Ballum from Miramar, who hasn't really had an opportunity to kind of, do what he could do. Robert Stafford, who I think is a guy that is kind of ready, Alex, to break out. The best athletes on the team easily. I mean, kid vertical jumps like 44 and a half, 41. So, and he's a basketball kid, and I think he's got great hips, and he knows how to cover, and I think you're going to see a lot more. So to answer your question, I think kind of overblown the worry that much, because there's a lot of intangibles that go into it. And as I mentioned, you're stronger up front. You're stronger in the front seven, which, gives the defensive secondary some more leeway and an opportunity to kind of, adjust to different things. And everybody makes mistakes. And, no matter where you are, Ohio State, Alabama, everyone's going to have shortcomings. I just think that while Miami may have shortcomings on experience, I think the talent's there to definitely develop some really good guys in that secondary.
For anyone who's new to Locked On Canes, or maybe you're new to Blue's work, understand he is very honest with his assessments of Miami's roster. I can remember Blue talking to you about 2 years ago at this time, prior to the 2022 season, which ended up being, we all know, 5-7, lost to Middle Tennessee State. And I remember you telling me before that season where you flat out said, I don't think Miami's roster is very good. Like you said that before the season. Right. It's
probably the worst roster they've had. I'm covering them back in the 60s and, watching them as a kid and seeing a lot of these teams that, even though Miami wasn't a powerhouse in the late 60s into the 70s, they had dudes. They had really good kids. You look at back as far as Ted Hendricks, but then you go into Chuck Foreman era, and then you got Gary Dunn and guys like that have played in the league and that were good enough. Dennis Harrah and Bill Hawkins, and more into your 80s. And, they've always had some kids. And I thought that roster a couple of years ago was just terrible. I mean, they didn't have very many players at all, and they had no backups. And but I'll tell you what, and I challenge all the fans to this day, get that roster at 22, and then put it side by side with what they have right now. And it's really not finished, but this is a roster that it's got to be 90-95% ready to go into the 2024 season. It just shows you that if you come in here with an objective, and a lot of people may not see, what Mario Cristobal was talking about at the beginning, but he came in here with the knowledge that he could do this, that, especially with the portal, especially with the way, his recruits and the way, that he and Maribel go about things, and adding little pieces like Jason Taylor and, and coaches like that. He knew the big picture. And I think the big picture is going to come into focus this year. Miami's got the potential to be one of those top 12 teams this year. And, I know it's kind of far-fetched because they did everything they could to go to a bowl game last year and lost to Rutgers. But let's let's look at the personnel that they've added over the last 5 months. Yeah. This is definitely a team up and down both sides of the ball that I think have an opportunity to really wow a lot of people. Schedule's not as tough as it was last year. The 2 home games against Virginia Tech and FSU are going to help. Obviously, I'm not going to overlook Florida. That's always going to be a challenge. Anytime you play an SEC school, it's going to be a challenge. But Miami's got to go in and feel that in at least out of the 12 games that they've got to have an edge over at least 9 or 10 teams that they're going to play.
I want to talk about how much better Miami's offense can be next year. I did have someone ask a valid question about the defense because Miami is still awaiting the decision of a defensive end, Tyler Barron, who may or may not decide to join Miami. Right. I don't know when that decision's going to come, but we'll talk about how needed he is, or maybe he's not that needed. Larry Blustein is with us, South Florida High School Sports, and does an awesome job, 560 WQAM and on the 6 Ring Canes podcast. You guys want to keep it locked. We're only getting started right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, if you're a small business owner, you know how important it is when you're hiring for your small business. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to a perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making this Monday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Hey, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I saw a question in the live chat. We're live, by the way, on YouTube, so smash that like button, subscribe to our channel. A question was asking if there's anything new with Tyler Barron, the edge rusher who most recently played for Tennessee, briefly transferred to Louisville. He's in the transfer portal. Blue, it sounds as if, and according to Cane Sport, it may now be between Miami and USC that Ole Miss could be falling behind in that 3-team sweepstakes. Miami versus USC right now. He's a graduate, so I had said maybe he needed to enroll by this week. According to Cane Sport, that is not the case. He doesn't have to enroll in school until the fall. This was a super productive player, Blue, in the SEC. I don't know if he has a timeline, if he's going to decide this week or if he's really going to take his time, but Miami already has a lot of talented players on the edge. I mean, Ruben Bain is back. They added Elijah Alston, who was super productive at Marshall the last couple of years. Obviously, you wouldn't say no to a chance at getting a guy like Tyler Barron, but how needed is he here?
Well, obviously, you always can need dudes, right up front, and put, and that all plays into the, what the secondary is going to be about. Because as you mentioned, they've got those kids coming off the edge, so much so that Wayne, got squoze out a little bit, and he was a guy that everybody was looking, forward to seeing. But yeah, he'd be a great addition, experience-wise, kind of be another, a coach in the locker room, kind of one of those guys who've been there, done that, kind of to ease in some of the young guys. And that's the one thing too, with Messidor and players like that, you're getting guys who's been around for a while. So that experience, just being around, I mean, they could play, but how they've matured in the locker room and they matured as student athletes. I think that, anytime you could add somebody with 4 or 5 years of experience at the college level, not just playing, but being around college life for that time, it's great because the locker room gets a lot stronger, becomes more, cohesive. And there's a lot of questions that the coaches don't have to answer, but your own teammates can answer. So yeah, I think he'd be a great addition.
Let's talk about Miami's offense, Blue. Somebody asked me the other day in our Locked On Canes Insiders chat if they could average more than 450 yards per game this coming season. I go what they did last year. Obviously, the big issue last year, turnovers, poor red zone execution. A lot of times it was turnovers in the red zone. But yardage-wise, Miami did a pretty good job just like moving it between the 20s, 431 yards per game last season, primarily with Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback and the cast of characters around him. But still, I think with the addition of Damien Martinez and with Cam Ward at the helm and even better receiver talent, because you bring in Sam Brown and Restrepo is a year more experienced, Jacoby George a year more experience, and so on. Tight end room, I think, will be a bigger factor this year. Yeah, I think they could add 20 yards at least per game from 431 to around the 450 range. Blue, what say you?
Yeah, and it all depends how, the offensive line remains healthy. You got a new center. I mean, Zach Carpenter is going to be good, but he's nowhere near what Lee was. And Lee brought something that a lot of high school or college kids these days don't bring in. He brought in everything with him, not only his athletic ability and awareness on the field. He was a team captain right away, and that doesn't happen very often when a guy comes in the first year and they make him a captain. So that leadership and that experience obviously is going to be a huge void. We'll see what Carpenter's going to do. Obviously, Ryan Rodriguez is waiting for his opportunity to get some reps as well. I think, up front is what we talked about, Samson Okalola. How is he going to do? Tommy Kinsler's coming on. So to me, offensive line-wise, and, we know that, and we talked about Inez Cooper last year, what a great job he did, and Francisco Mauano, we know that he's bringing it in quite a bit. So I think what happens up front offensive line wise is going to telltale a lot of things because it helps your running game. As you said, Martinez joins, hopefully Mark Fletcher, comes back, and I know that and this is Miami's way of dealing with things, that they'll never tell you the full extent of anybody's injury, but we know that Mark Fletcher was out for a reason. But then you got A.J. Allen, who I think is still a really good back when healthy. They added a guy who I think is going to be, over the next couple of years, one of the best all-around athletes in the nation, Elijah Lofton, who I think can play anywhere. And you're going to see, and I have a little friendly wager with some people that he's going to make the biggest splash on opening day against Florida than anybody else. He's going to do things that a lot of people never expected, Alex, because of the fact that a lot of people don't understand. He, as a running back, he's not really a running back. He's an H-back. And if you get him paired on any linebacker, forget it. He's blowing by. If you watch him in any of the scrimmages, and I was at 2 of the scrimmages, he get into the secondary and outrun the secondary. So having him along with what you already have coming back, and you mentioned, some of the really, really good talent that Miami has, I think another guy who I think is going to take a huge step forward is Isaiah Horton. I think he really started to do that, in the spring. He's a wide body guy. He can run. And then you got all those hopefuls like, Nykar and Josiah Trader and as you mentioned, Jacoby George, who, if Jacoby George put it all together on the football field, he could be as good as you're looking for. He just has to get his head together and become a leader rather than a follower. And I think once that happens, and then I think, Restrepo is going to be, you come on campus and the first guy you want to befriend and start throwing to is Restrepo. And that's what Ward did in the spring. He knows he's going to be the dude. He's a first team, all ACC player, one of the best in the country, one of the most productive in the country. So to answer your question, they've got a chance to put a couple of games where they go into the 500s because it's going to show all the depth that they have. And a guy who's not starting, that if he gets an opportunity in the third or fourth quarter and Miami's up by 25, 30 points, you can't put a governor on him, so they're going to add to it as well. So having a depth factor, having backup quarterbacks who are more than capable. Obviously we saw last year what Williams did against Florida State, and Miami had enough trust and he kept them in the game till he got hurt. And Paffenberger, and then your guy who had a great spring out of Georgia. So I think Miami's got an opportunity to be really special, but I put a lot of emphasis on Elijah Lofton because he doesn't look like a freshman. If you watch him play, this is a kid that there's no question he expects to be in that deep rotation. And I think he's going to make a huge splash just because of that fact. And we know what Ward's capable of. Got to keep away from the turnovers. And that was a problem. If you look over the last couple of years, he turned the ball over quite a few times. But I think he has enough personnel around him where he doesn't have to do everything.
I know it's a long way out, but what are you expecting in that game against Florida? Because you know Florida's roster better than most as well. What do you think is going to happen August 31st?
Well, I think their quarterback keeps him in the game because he's experienced. He's been at Wisconsin. He was, at Florida last year and had a fairly decent year. They come back fairly intact on the offensive line. They have some really good defensive line. Secondary is going to be a little bit of a problem for them. And if they could get after Miami and keep that game close, it's going to be a nice game. But if Miami starts asserting themselves with all these newcomers, and Miami can win this game pretty handily, but it's going to be a tough game. Don't get blinded by the fact that Florida was a 5-6 team or whatever, and then go to a bowl game. They got dudes, they got kids, and they got some good kids from the portal. They find and this is Billy Napier's trial year. If he doesn't do well this year and don't go to a bowl game, then that position will be filled, and everybody knows it. He probably knows it as well. You can't be an average team in Gainesville, not with the support that they have, not with the alumni they have. You cannot be a 6-6 team. You could barely be a 7-5 team. They've just got to put it all in the gear, and they know a win over Miami is going to be huge. Miami's reloading, and everybody knows around the country that now they didn't before that Miami means business, and they feel that they have an opportunity to be in the top 12 teams when playoff time comes. And, it's on the road. It's never going to be easy. And Florida knows their schedule is crazy again, and winning 4 or 5 games is probably a reality. And if they could probably get Miami in the opener, but this is a big game for Miami too, because there's a lot of non-believers in Mario Cristobal still. You go on the message boards and all of them calling him all these names. And, even with all these new guys, he's not going to win. So it's a huge game for him too. This is the year, this is year 3. This is the year where, you get into that position. And I think Miami's ahead of schedule, especially because of the portal.
Well, we talked earlier about the defensive backfield. One of Miami's most important recruits in the 2025 cycle is a defensive back who does have family ties to Miami. Want to talk about DJ Pickett when we come back. The great Larry Blustein is with us, 560 WQAM, the 6th-ring Cane. You know his work. He is all over the place. You guys want to keep it locked. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Oh, and I know you're keeping it locked to FanDuel. Florida Panthers money line. Cashed in last night. I know you might have been worried. Down 2-0 after the first period. The comeback Cats, the cardiac Cats got it done. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Become a Locked On Canes insider. If you want to get text messages directly from my phone to yours with breaking news, recruiting updates, transfer portal scoops, you could try it free for 14 days. Click that link below. Become a Locked On Canes insider. Then if you like it, after 2 weeks, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there on Locked On Canes insiders. Always added value here from Larry Blustein. Blue, Miami would love to basically recruit the entire Pickett family. Booker Pickett Sr. played at Miami in the 90s. Booker Pickett Jr. is enrolling this summer as a true freshman. I think this is going to be another future weapon on the edge. He had great high school career, and Miami is also recruiting his cousin, DJ Pickett, who's one of the top recruits in the country, Blue, one of the top defensive backs in America out of Zephyrhills High School in the Tampa area. You've seen this player in person, Blue. I know Miami obviously has a lot of competition. This is a very sought-after prospect. Florida and LSU and others are after him heavily. What can you tell me about DJ Pickett?
Big time kid, probably the number one player for 2025 in the state. He's just a physical kid. He's quick. He turns the game around. When I watch a lot of football during the summer too, and see him light up people as a wide receiver too. It's just that's who you got to get. You got to go after players like that. And I think Miami's got a good shot only because of the lineage. Remember, they got a younger brother who's in the 20 or a younger sibling in the 2016 class yeah, which is going to be pretty interesting as well. But yeah, great player. And just to answer a question, because somebody asked if I thought Lofton would be a starter. No, he's not going to be a starter, but he's going to be a very integral part of the offense. Just to answer that question.
I agree with that. I could see multiple tight ends playing, Blue, because Elijah Arroyo will probably be the starter, and Riley Williams as well. Played a lot last year, had a really good spring. So there's going to be a lot of tight ends who are going to have to get on the field.
Oh, I agree. And yeah, I want to, and this is Elijah Arroyo's year. He's been there for 3 years. When Will Mallory was here, he was supposed to push Will and all this stuff, and he got hurt, and he's been, on the sidelines more than he's been on the field. And I think this is the year that everybody got bigger. He got stronger. We saw him in the spring. He's a good looking kid. He still has a lot of athletic ability. And, he could be a very big part of this, this offense. And remember that a lot of teams, especially, are going to pay a lot of attention to Xavier Restrepo. And why not? He had all those catches last year. This is going to open up things for everybody. And this is a good thing. And then we're going to get to see Dawson, the offensive coordinator that we had a couple of years ago, come in, and everyone's dropping their jaw. Look at he did at Houston. Well, he's got Brown, who's going to come in, and believe me, he's not going to sit on the bench, not with catching over 100 balls. So you're going to force a lot of guys to step their butt up. There's not going to, if you drop a ball or you dog after plays, you're going to find a seat on that bench, because now Miami has that type of athletes at that position. Yeah, not all proven, but most of them have shown what they could do. And you got guys like Brown and Restrepo who've already shown what they could do. And those are two guys that the defense is going to have to account for. And then that's why I think this offense could, and it's not going to be on any one person's shoulders like it has been in the past. We look at Van Dyke. If Van Dyke didn't go, Miami didn't go. And right. I don't think that's going to be the position. If Ward is not clicking, he's got a running game. He could go into a short passing game where, guys like, Bobby Washington or Ray has the speed to make something out of nothing. So, yeah, they have so many explosive parts to this offense that it's going to be fun.
Now, in your travels around the state just last week, you got to watch Miami Hurricanes running back commit Gerard Pringle over in the Tampa area. What were your takes in watching this player in person?
Yeah, big time kid, and I've watched him over the last 4 years. I think I told you last time we were together, I saw him as an 8th grader going to the 9th grade. He played with Armwood's 7-on-7 team at USF, and he played more receiver back then. But now you could see, he's built to the point where he's not going to go down on the first hit. He runs his pad, as they say, his pad level is where it's supposed to be. He's got a little bit of shake to him. He'll bounce off you, and he's got the speed. So he's exactly what Miami needs to continue to elevate the position, no doubt.
Blue, you on the radio tonight?
Yeah, got a good show. I mean, it's yeah, we're at the position now that this week is all about high school football and the towards the end of spring with with jamborees and kickoffs and these games and stuff. And we'll also have a highly regarded wide receiver who's in the mix too for a lot of schools nationally. Joshua Moore out of West Broward, kid's just an amazing football talent. I think he's got an opportunity to do some special things. So yeah, we got a really, really good show. I think that Alex Barron, who used to be an offensive lineman in the NFL for 4 or 5 teams, played with the FSU back in the day. He's a new head coach at MacArthur. We're going to have him on, talk about, it's awfully tough for these guys like the Donnell Bennett's and the Teddy Bridgewaters and people like that who've played any length of time in the NFL to come back and start washing uniforms and that's what you got to do at the high school level. There's a lot of details and Mike Rumpf went through it as we know. So so we're going to have Alex on. We'll talk to him a little bit. It's going to be a good little show. Dave Dunn, the head coach at Columbus, is going to spend some time with us as well. So, it's going to be a nice little show, 6 to 8. And we encourage the Panthers to keep winning. So it's going to either be a Monday, Tuesday, the rest of the way. And I'm excited. I'm excited about the summer because for me, the offseason is a lot more productive for me because I get to see a lot more people. And especially going to, Tallahassee and to Gainesville and to Tampa and Orlando and here in Miami and FIU, I get to see all these kids that come to these events. And you don't have to hunt them down or go to the schools. They come to you. And when you have 200, 300, 400 kids at one destination, plus 7-on-7 teams, it's a perfect venue for me anytime. And like I said, get to see a couple thousand kids during the summer. And that's not a bad gig.
Well, here on Locked On Canes, we do not believe in the word off season. This is year round, and Blue lives that year round lifestyle, so he knows it. He knows it well. Make sure you follow him on X at Larry Blustein. Follow us at Locked On Canes, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.